and the rest of the deck is just built to be able to play as many cards in a single turn as possible, because you don't expect the game to go on for beyond turn 5, I think.
Well, let's see. Looking like a reasonable start, honestly, already for GivePLZ with the SI7 Skulker. He can happily throw away one of his 2 Rustrot Vipers that he has in the list, which, weirdly enough, you know, it obviously hit the mark yesterday against Glory's Owl Warlock, where it was just completely demolishing those rods. It's not bad here either, right? With Bloodseeker also being a pretty key weapon to remove in the mid game.
Not bad, but I think GivePLZ can aim a lot higher than that, because there are certain dream cards to deal with aggro here. And I did say that this is going to be a pretty miserable matchup for Shaxy to begin with, because there is a lot of responsive potential in the Quest Rogue for minions of the size that Face Hunter likes to put forward. The SI7 Operative, rushing and gaining stealth is big. SI7 Agent, the 2 damage, dealing with Flame Imps was an old interaction from who knows back when. Still relevant right now, except the Flame Imps are intrepid initiates.
Gorgeous start to the game here for GivePLZ, though. I loved his coin neophyte to play around Doggy Biscuit from Shaxy, meaning that the only buff he could go for was, like, you know, a Adorable Infestation, which trades evenly anyway, or, as we saw, a lucky roll on Refa from the Demon Companion. But from here for GivePLZ, with another top deck of the Extortion, it means that he's got, what, Skulker plus Gizmo if he needs. Just straight up SI7 Operative is really powerful here with the stealth built in as well.
That's great. And trade down the Guardian Og Merchant and makes it such that if Shaxy wants to buff the remaining Marsoul Cubs with his Wriggling Horror, well, the 2-1 Operative can trade down one of the 2/2s very nicely, and it's already pre-developed on board. Just very cleanly working out for GivePLZ here, and he gets one of the best tempo gizmos as well. So Shaxy has his work cut out for him. Frog and Wriggling Horror seems like the only real line here, but it's not great. Okay, I guess he's weaving in the hero powers now as well. Fair enough.
Yeah, it says a lot about his game plan, right? And, you know, I think this is probably correct. There's basically no healing in the Rogue deck, and although this is looking rough, if he can get one more hit with a minion face this game, I think the board has done its job. He can give up on it then and just play minions to distract his opponents, slow down GivePLZ's own lethal race, and just point everything else towards the dome.
Oh, but man, it doesn't feel like it's gonna get there this early. Maybe with a top deck of Furious Howl that could get him the damage he's missing, but GivePLZ with SI7 cards played and the Gyroblade developed such that he won't even necessarily need to tank the damage from the Wriggling Horror to deal with it. He now will have to, most likely, since more minions are being played. He can just start to race Shaxy pretty efficiently.
He can, but he has to go really fast. Like, this SI Informant is big, and the Battlemaster next turn is, or in the coming turn, sorry, is fantastic. That's exactly the kind of play you need to spin this one around. But I don't even think Shaxy needs the Furious Howl. He just needs, like, a quick shot or a Bloodseeker or another aimed shot. Like, this is really close to just getting there right now.
I think it looks closer than it is because, look, the aim shot is dealing 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if he doesn't get 2 burn spells in the next 2 turns, he's still a little bit short.
I guess so. I guess so.
Because he needs still 8 damage. But he has picked up a board-based game plan. Very flimsy one, but it is a difficult minion to fully remove, to be fair.
Yeah.
GivePLZ. Not even gonna bother to see what's in nice before letting rip with the Wicked Stab, but fair enough, the turn is just super clean, right?
Just step.
Yeah, we are at the point where Shaxy doesn't have any individual top decks for lethal, I don't think, and that means that Battlegrounds Battlemaster should be able to seal the game.
Yes, if he aimed shots the 2-3, I think he would be able to just survive, right? But I agree, he's not going to be doing that, which means, what, 12, 16, 18? Man, you called it. GivePLZ found it. A very, very quick game 1, which may set the tone here for the rest of the series, as Shaxy's Face Hunter not quite able to lock down enough of a board and dies very quickly. This was a super aggressive rogue camp. Yeah,
to be fair, that matchup is probably a lot closer than this pan out worked out because GivePLZ did get a very strong disruptive opening hand, all of the efficient removal, and ended up with some of the best tempo gizmos. The Gyro Blade into Undercover Mole, you know, outside of Spyomatic instead of Mole, that was probably the best outcome for him here, but he piloted it very expertly. I think you hit the nail on the head with the Coin Cult Neophyte on turn 1 truly being the stroke of genius, making the most difficult point for the Rogue, which is turns 1 and 2 versus Hunter, a lot more bearable, and he managed to seal it out with the early Battlegrounds Battlemaster. Does mean though that GivePLZ still has to win with his Demon Hunter, which I think is fairly reasonable. He just has a lot of anti-aggro tools versus aggro decks, but it's that Druid looming in the back of his head that things are really going to start getting difficult.
Yeah, that's the tough one, and GivePLZ refuses to play it quite yet, going with now, I believe, the Demon Hunter, which I did want to talk about this because you said a little bit earlier on that, you know, obviously Fel Demon Hunter has a good matchup against aggro, which I agree with still. It is probably for the most part, its DNA is still primarily anti-aggro, but I feel like that matchup has changed a little bit with its transition away from like a pure quest OTK deck to this Fel variant, and the fact that Moargs have left the list entirely. That does change a lot of its matchup potential against aggro, I feel.
It does, and also we are looking at a very specific type of aggro deck in the Buff Paladin where it does have the capability of transitioning into late game with the Lightforge Cariel at the top. And in fact, its most potent turns are probably in the mid-game with the mid-range options of Blessing of Authority into Sunwing Squawker, and generating individual large minions is the most effective strategy versus Demon Hunter, because outside of exclusively Magtheridon, it's really tough for them to deal with minions upwards of 8 health.
It is, yeah. And, you know, we did see Lambi Series being very liberal with his Magtheridon earlier on against the Quest Rogue, which I did come round to the idea of in the end, even if I had some reservations at the time. I think, as you laid out, against Paladin, it's going to be very crucial to time that well, because Magtheridon preemptively on turn 4 against these types of decks is generally something you're looking to do, because the extra 3 damage probably won't kill you, and you can then use it to stop them developing for a turn and then blow up the board and have a 12-12 in play. But the problem is, this buff Paladin could just buff those Acolytes. It makes Magtheridon so much harder to play. If you play the Magtheridon and then they play the Blessing of Authority on it, and it's all of a sudden got 10 health, or 11 health, sorry. It's so difficult to kill. So for GivePLZ, primarily, we're looking, of course, for him to focus on his own game plan in these early turns. We're looking for card draw, a little bit of removal, of course, to deal with these early boards, and then just praying that Shaxy doesn't hit too many of those big buff cards alongside the Squawker.
True, or the Trog just going early and unanswered, because GivePLZ currently doesn't have a potential clean way to kill that on turn 1. And Shaxy has, I think, a very clever keep here. Iron Deep Trog into a 2-drop with the capability of coining 2-drop plus hero power at worst for turn 3, which is still a pretty potent thing to do versus Demon Hunter. But GivePLZ, he keeps studies, which I don't see very often, honestly. And you can argue gets rewarded by the fact that he gets glide off the top, because that's a potential outclass glide turn 3. But that plan doesn't work so well with a Trog staring you down.
Oh, I know. Are you really just going to sit there and go Illidari Studies glide and be facing down 4 Trogs? Like, even though the buffs don't copy actual copies, you don't summon actual copies of the Trog anymore, just a neutral 1/2 Iron Deep Trog, it's still just too scary. So I fully respect this line he's going for, of just slowing it down a little bit, trying to hero power it over 2 turns. And now with the Talented Arcanist picked up, things get a little bit more interesting, especially with 3 tempting removal options offered from the Illidari Studies.
Yeah, that one is a bit difficult. Like the Dreadlord's Bite, unfortunately, the Outcast ability doesn't help a lot, but it is the one that lets him immediately clear 1 Trog without summoning a new one, because the I-Beam wouldn't really have helped his problem that much. And the Kurtrus was simply too expensive at that point, so I do think it had to be the weapon for GivePLZ there, but Shaxy is going to start the onslaught of buffs here with not too greedy of a Sunwing Squawker. I think this is a very good usage of it. You don't have to wait for Blessing of Authority if it's already strong right now.
Whoa, and speaking of that Magtheridon, oh, it was tempting there, wasn't it? Like, going into turn 4 before that Blessing of Authority comes online, potentially denying a whole extra turn from them. I guess in the end, the Glide was just too clean of a setup, and he lets rip instantly, trying to find some more potent removal options, which, unfortunately, he hasn't found, but he, of course, has another do-over with the second Glide.
I think if GivePLZ had a guaranteed clear on the Acolytes for the turn immediately after, then he could have thought about it a bit more. But without the immediate clear available, I do like the line. Shaxy going for Hold the Bridge, a card that is like better Apotheosis, honestly, with the Divine Shield. But the Lifesteal is only for this turn. Obviously, that part of the card is not what's relevant here. Shaxy, of course, very much still healthy. But the Divine Shield just... We know that Noble Mount has been such a problematic card for both Demon Hunter and Warlock of any variant to deal with, so it's just adding another version of that card into the deck and making the minions even more sticky. Skull?
Ooh.
Oh, but he's leaving 8 damage on board.
Oh, and the thing is, like, I was going to say Skull doesn't complete the quest, but it actually does with the double jump as well. You know, there are some cards you could get that would be absolutely insane, but I guess on average, you know, if you're discounting 2 or 1 mana cards with the quest progression anyway, you're only getting very limited amounts of reduction off the Skull. So I respect the play here for GivePLZ, even if it's the decidedly less spicy option.
And continue drawing with the Need for Greed. I don't think there were any outs from the double jump that allowed him to actually clear this board. And in that case, Demon Hunter just kind of has to grit their teeth and say, all right, you might kill me this next turn, but in the case you don't, at least I've given myself a much better hand to swing it back.
Yep.
And actually, it's really tough for Shaxy to find a lethal here on 5 mana, right? He would need 6 damage, so like exactly another... Hand of a doll. That's not even there, is it?
He's already used one. Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then a top deck of Hold the Bridge from this would be 1 damage short, I think. Or 2 damage. We don't see the top deck.
I think it was Skulker.
Okay.
There we go.
In terms of positioning, I feel like maybe Stealth in the middle is safer against Fell Scream type of
100%.
plays.
Yeah.
But it's still a very difficult Fell Scream to navigate for GivePLZ, because he would have to use one to shave the shields and then use the Arcanist on the other one, and that's both Fell Screams used. And if he goes in with both Arcanists on the second Fell Scream, that's still not enough damage to actually kill off the Squawker. He's like an I-beam away. I mean, he could tank the damage, but that does not sound pleasant at all. Okay,
Finds
Aura.
ammo. That's so big. Okay, so he can go...
It's still ugly.
It is still ugly. He could go like Fell Scream Blast, Arcanist, Fell Scream Blast to heal up, and then it would be down at 4 health.
And then you would still have to go the other Arcanist with Immolation Aura. It's just not great. I think at that point, you probably just don't take the maximum healing, like another Fell Scream here and then Arcanist Immolation Aura. But GivePLZ is just going to go for it this way around.
Wow, he's just leaving up the 9-4. I did not consider this line.
Yeah, and he's dead to Smite. I think the other line he might have still been dead because he doesn't get that much healing. Not sure. But yeah, just the fact that it was at the 7 health breakpoint plus Divine Shield just made things so difficult for GivePLZ.
I don't know. I get that this is a worthy risk from his perspective, where you're saying, okay, I'm dead to Battlegrounds Battlemaster and I'm dead to Mr. Smite. Those 2 cards are insta-lose to, fine. But if I go all in and use all my resources, then I'm losing the game in the long term anyway. It's one of those things that's just so hard to calculate in your head right off the bat in those situations. But my instincts are still telling me just go for the full board clear there. You can go for quest completion in the following turns. You still have another Immolation Aura in your deck. You can try and just pull ahead at some point, hope to find a Magtheridon maybe and get there that way. But he takes the risk. He tries to call Shaxy's bluff, but of course Mr. Smite was there. And that's what the deck does. Paladin taking down the Demon Hunter. No real surprises there, I don't think.
Yeah, this particular type of aggro deck goes tall enough that Demon Hunter does struggle against it. It is somewhat the outlier in Shaxy's decks in terms of the curve here because it does have that ability to transition to mid-range, which is so potent versus Demon Hunter in particular. But I think it's not so big a deal that Shaxy got a win with that deck at some point. It's really still all about whether GivePLZ can get a win with his Druid later on. He might still be sticking to the Fel DH to deal with the aggro Druid though, which I think should be a lot more doable because this is a deck that is extremely vulnerable to Immolation Aura.
Very true. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Wait, he went to Druid. My mistake. GivePLZ is queuing up his tough deck to win with.
Indeed, yeah. I guess he's just, I don't know, going with the old roll the D3 to see which deck you're supposed to queue up in Conquest to not give your opponent any whatever. But the aggro Druid against this Druid, I do think is obviously a miserable matchup for the Kazakhstan. Oh no, sorry, for the alignment Druid, even worse than the Kazakhstan Druid, arguably here. As you have no Glowfly, like the spell variant does. You have less armor gain because you don't have Feral Rage or Moon-Touched Amulet. You don't have Wild Growth, which a lot of the other lists do that you'd definitely be looking for. You do have Owls. That's probably your saving grace that you're looking for in this matchup to turn this one around. Like, Moonlit Guidance into Umbral Owl is by far, I would argue, the best chance that GivePLZ has to turn this one around. But outside of exactly that, like, there are really limited outs to be able to survive the onslaught that this aggro Druid throws down.
And no space for Scale of Onyxia either for GivePLZ. However, there is space for a Viper, just like with GivePLZ's entire lineup. Aside from the Umbral Owls, there's also Lightning Bloom, which sometimes allows you to cheat out a discovered spell from Nature Studies. Maybe an early Best in Shell can save GivePLZ, but this opening hand is not it. I mean, he has Jerry Rig to keep cycling, but that's where the train stops. He's going with a 2/2 Treant just to get ahead on board somehow, and that is going to save him quite a lot of health in the long run. Shaxy, not with the easiest turn in history of Peasant here, but with the Druid of the Wreath option with Adorable Infestation, can choose to develop that instead, or just Bone Chewer Brawler.
I mean, it's all good. I think it's the Druid of the Reef just because 4 health on a taunt is like so difficult to deal with for the Druid. It means they'd have to go they have to go for this Lunar Eclipse, plus the 2/2 bashing, and there's still a 1/1 on board to buff up next turn if you want to. It's just everything working in Shaxy's favor there. And then with the follow-up of the Peasant plus the Marsul Cub, and of course, the infamous never-to-be-fixed Mule Bug. It's back, baby!
I can't believe it's still there. I mean, we just haven't seen this card in so long, but yep, Pack Mule. Man, that wrecked my train of thought. You're absolutely right about the 2/4 being a much better development than the Bone Chewer Brawler, just to have that breakpoint against Lunar Eclipse, and Shaxy doubles down on the fact that he has a completely unanswerable board. It's just miserable for GivePLZ. You can tell by what's happening in his camera here. He doesn't even want to show his face because all he can do is hero power and be sad.
Oh man, I just love how instantly defeatist GivePLZ is. It's just so funny every time. As soon as something doesn't go his way, he just slumps back in his chair, head on the desk, like, oh, I don't want to play.
I wouldn't want to play this game either if I had this situation, Derek. I mean, he has Overgrowth into 4 ramp, and then maybe Onyxia, but my goodness, will he be very dead by then, I think. Because map it out, right? Shaxy has additional card draw every turn because the Peasant is just going unanswered. He can develop at minimum 2 more points of damage every turn. At some point, he draws Mark of the Spiked Shell / Arbor up. Oh, wow. I don't even know what the 1 damage does, unless he's planning on not overgrowthing next turn.
I mean, I was thinking spammy Arcanist, but 1, he doesn't have it in his deck, and 2, that wouldn't even make sense because that's not how the card works. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, honestly, it felt pretty close to just resignation here for GivePLZ already. I'm thinking through with Overgrowth next turn, 7 mana the turn after. If he can hit, you know, the kind of, it's like he needs to go Bloom into Cenarium Ward the turn after and hit Brasswing. Like, it's definitely not over yet, but these outs are getting slimmer and slimmer. Or, as I was saying, this, sorry, the Moonlit Guidance, Double Owl, get them all down, fight back for board that way. There are slim outs that he can still try and hope for in the next couple turns. But if a single threatening board comes down, a big buff card for Shaxy, this one could be over.
You know, Shaxy could be a real hero and just never play the pack mules this game.
We both know that's not going to happen. It's Shaxy G. Insta-slam them.
The chaotic energy is just too strong here.
True.
But honestly, just going for... He doesn't have the board space to even play all of them. That's how good his problems are.
Yeah,
it could just be Bone Chore Brawler plus Mark of the Wild. It's definitely not composting because he's already drawing with the onslaught of peasants. Yep.
Yeah, GivePLZ just dead next turn, right? So he needs to find the answer right now. And with Jerry Rig off the top, that's not going to be it. So he can draw 3 cards, and if he hits, like, what, Bloom?
Moonlit into the other owl. Is it playable by then? Yeah, you would play 2 spells, then the other owl would cost 2.
And that's GG.
Yep. I mean, we called it at the beginning of the series. This Druid from GivePLZ is just so completely vulnerable to Shaxy's entire lineup. And GivePLZ, if he wants, can go for a much more doable matchup with his Demon Hunter into the Face Hunter. But if he doesn't want to go for that, it's going to be more of the same, right? The fact that Face Hunter now has access to buffing cards is Druid's worst nightmare. Doggy Biscuit, Ramming Mound just makes it so impossible to deal with those early minions. And by the time you have scraped together a way to trade them off with Umbral Owl maybe, then you're just dead to aim shot.
No, that's definitely true. But I think the saving grace here for GivePLZ would be that, like, as the Face Hunter, you're more likely to draw dead than you are with that aggro Druid. Like, the aggro Druid is just low curving minions. That's the entirety of the deck. Like, with 10 1-drops, you're so unlikely to miss. All the rest is 2-drops, and then there's like 5 cards that cost 3 or more in the entire deck. All of which are still pretty good draws in the early game with like Drekthar and Oracle of Illume. But the Face Hunter, on the other hand, has cards like Bloodseeker, not especially high tempo at the start. Furious Howl can be a dead draw. Aim Shot, Quick Shot, Wound Prey. Like, there's some of these cards that are maybe a little bit underwhelming in the starting hand that the Druid can deal with. So that would very much be the out here for GivePLZ. In addition, of course, to finding, as we were laying out, nice early Umbral Owls, plenty of ramp, finding that removal as well. It's a slightly more winnable matchup from my perspective for GivePLZ.
Yep. There's still 12 1-drops though in the Face Hunter.
True.
And Neophytes. However, there is the fact that GivePLZ is going first, so he can fish for actually nature studies. I feel like I just don't think that Jerry Rig Carpenter gets there. All it's doing is drawing Nourish, which is something you're not gonna have the time to play. I love the mulligan from GivePLZ. He needs like very scammy ways to win this. Scammy Arcanist, maybe, somehow. But maybe studies into the Treant like he did last game is somewhere he can go. Partner assignment?
Yeah,
I'd be
that's
looking
not
at
bad.
heavily here. It just gives him a curve. Hopefully they're well-statted minions. Those are not, but there are things to do in the early game, whereas he has, in other worlds, absolutely nothing but hero power.
Yeah, they're not terrible, right? If he can get himself an Overgrowth off the top, then you're going, what? Direwolf, Bear Shark, Overgrowth, Bloom, Cenarion? That sounds like a potentially winning hand if you get yourself a good 8-drop off the top. Deviates away to the hero power, which, okay, I understand the Wolf isn't doing all too much here. But basically, it gives him a little bit of time to distract Shaxy with.
So in terms of timing Neophyte, this is not a particular turn that Shaxy would like highly prioritize stopping, right? Because it's not Overgrowth yet. However, just as a 3-2 body, I feel like the Neophyte is valuable enough to just play down here.
But then next turn you're going like Demon Companion, Bloodseeker. I don't know, I honestly kind of preferred the Bloodseeker there, just because you know they're going to play a 3-cost beast here the vast majority of the time. And so you want to disrupt their spells next turn, because like, if they have any game-winning plan, it has to revolve around Overgrowth, right?
Well, counterpoint, if they Overgrowth the next turn, aren't you pretty happy? Oh, I guess, okay, the fact that he had to allocate some resources to dealing with the 4-3 makes this damage look a lot less, but it's still gonna be their entire turn if they Overgrowth here, and then Shaxy's just pushing GivePLZ all the way down to 10, so I think it's fine.
All right, what are we looking at here? Bloom. Yeah. Ooh, okay.
Okay. Like the Bloom, right?
We could go Bloom, Luna.
Yes. Very clever spot.
Damn.
Only has 3 mana to work with the next turn, but that's fine. He has saved himself a lot of health by going for this line.
Absolutely huge. Shaxy is looking for any really dumpable cards. Iron Deep Trog is exactly that, and I mean, yeah, Furious Howl or Quick Shot both here I think are fine, because both kind of want the other one to get rid of cards for them.
Doggy Biscuit is huge. It looks like Shaxy's gonna stick a minion here guaranteed. Yeah, it's a debate between Jerry Rig and Hero Power here for GivePLZ, because I think he's earmarked both these Blooms to just play Onyxia next turn. Alternatively, he could Bloom out one Cenarion Ward, which is safer. And if you go for that on your turn 7, you have 5 mana, but then that means the other Bloom is kind of stranded indefinitely.
I mean, the one other line I see is you could go Hero Power the Trog, Hero Power Bloom Cenarion in order to play around the Tunnel Trog duplicating on the following turns, but I don't think that's better than either of the two lines. I'd rather just let them have a few Trogs.
Anyway, going Bloom Onyxia can deal with it.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Alright, so it's gonna be painful for GivePLZ in the meantime, tanking the damage from the Trog, from the Bloodseeker. But he can have a path to stabilizing here.
Ooh, that's not doing anything, is it? So, Onyxia leaves you at 8 health, which means you're unlikely to be dead, I want to say, if you manage to clear everything, which you could.
But depending on what Shaxy's hand is, you are very scared of dying just through burst damage in 2 turns.
Right.
And we can see that the setup is very doable for Shaxy here. There's Bloodseeker plus the Quick Shot for 5 damage, plus the Hero Power 7, and then another charge of the Bloodseeker and another Hero Power on the next turn, plus another top deck by that point.
So is it Brasswing? Is that the out here for GivePLZ?
I don't think so. I think he would still lean towards Onyxia and just hope that Shaxy's hand is more minions instead of burst damage.
Okay.
Because what the Onyxia does is threaten counter lethal as well, which, you know, if Shaxy doesn't have the immediate kill in 2 turns, then GivePLZ doesn't give him that 3rd turn to find lethal, because he's also just pushing a lot of damage with the Onyxia. Okay. Pilpertinger is pretty slow for Shaxy here, and he values the Hero Power and the efficiency of Quick Shot over the draw potential with Quick Shot the next turn, which I completely agree with.
Oh, Wildheart Guff off the top with the overload, making him unable to play it. Such a brutal way to go out for GivePLZ, but it does mean that Shaxy taking the win with the Hunter, the Druid, and the Paladin, all three, one after the other, and the Druid for GivePLZ. I mean, it obviously looked horrible for him, but it's a glimpse into the future, perhaps, for how Shaxy's run is going to be looking, because almost everyone, I think actually everyone else left in the tournament now has Druid in their lineup, in the Overgrowth version, be it Spell version, Armor version, Kazakhstan, or the Celestial Alignment, whatever. Shaxy has plenty of prey for him to prey upon with this aggro lineup.
I will say, though, he got perhaps the easiest version of Druid for him to beat in the alignment one, which has no natural armor gain outside of Cenarian Ward, which is very expensive, and the Owls are tough to get online so early. The Lunar Eclipse is really the only reliable removal there, whereas Kazakhstan Druids tend to have Scale of Onyxia, and blooming that out can be very punishing against aggro. So Shaxy will have perhaps a more difficult road ahead of him, but so far the Octotrog lineup has passed its first test with flying colors, and you know what, I'm pretty happy to see it, even though GivePLZ did have to take one for the team there. It's just seeing Conquest work out for somebody who truly builds their lineup for the theory of Conquest.
That's right, it's all for content. Now all players who lose can blame it on content. Casters making misplays can now officially blame it on content as well, as you will hopefully get to see in the weeks to come as well. But like you say, Shaxy starting to bolster that 50% win rate, right? Trying to get himself up closer towards qualifying through to the World Championship, as he's come so close to on multiple opportunities. But it is going to be next up Hyung, who we had a lot of fun seeing yesterday in his first game on stream in Hearthstone Grandmasters against Possessi, who we are desperate to see in action once again. His first time on stream, I believe, since his World Championship win, and with his own set of decks that are pretty spicy as well. He's, of course, got himself